And we're live. So, well, Grayson, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. Great being here.
We've just been chatting for 20 minutes before to catch up. Yeah, so tell me about, what you want to show today and what we're going to go through.
Yeah, so, I know that there's a lot of people using QuickMail and, because it's such a fast moving tool and there's a lot of new pieces, I thought I'd show kind of two different use cases I have personally for using the QuickMail platform.
Cool.
One is kind of internally for a project that I founded called SD Revolution, which is more based around a community and really kind of building content and togetherness for the sales development space.
Cool.
But then I want to go into also a second use case that I think will be a lot more relevant to a lot of the sellers here, which is a client that I'm actually managing for kind of assisting outbound lead gen. And
Sweet.
so,
but both accounts are useful for you at the moment. One is for that project and the other one for client project, right?
Absolutely. You guys can look at my billing links. It's been a few years.
That's true. All right, let's do it. You want to share your screen?
Yep. Let me get that pulled up real quick.
I was pretty excited to see that with you, actually.
That thing keeps popping up. Cool. So let me
zoom a bit.
In my screen just a bit, but these are the sequences that I currently have running at SD Revolution. I think the first thing to note is that there are a lot of different ways that you can use softwares like QuickMail. And so I just wanted to briefly kind of touch on what we've done so far as an early stage kind of startup that's trying to interact with this new list that we're building.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that we did is move into like an onboarding, because anytime that you're generating leads, whether it's coming from social or inbound forms, I think it's a really good idea to introduce yourself and who you are and what you're trying to provide in terms of value.
Yeah, I do that too, actually. I have also some form captures on all of my blog article, and that feeds automatically into a QuickMail campaign, like a very personal one. How did you find this article and stuff like that? How do you actually capture your leads at this stage?
So at this stage, it's really simple. We just use forms on our website.
Okay.
Though I will say that we will be using QuickMail, of course, to do a similar onboarding process for people who just join via social. So we can try to interact with those people. So yeah, I think, beyond onboarding, right? We've also been trying to figure out how to, convert the leads and kind of the audience members we've gathered just from the assets we produce. So, we had an event in June that had, more than 60 registrants. We launched an ebook that same month. And I think it had like 10 downloads in the first 30 days. And so
cool.
we used QuickMail to actually action on some of the lists that we built externally through our own content to try to actually get them eventually into that community onboarding sequence.
And you're importing them, or do you actually use Zaps to actually just add them into QuickMail right away?
That's a good question. So first, I'm not using Zaps, but I have used Zaps with QuickMail before. Yeah. So we're early stage. Zaps is on the list, but I can tell anyone who's listening that QuickMail has really good integrations with Zapier, and you could take something like a Google spreadsheet or a set of Google spreadsheets and just pretty much create an automation system that can connect to either your CRM or however you want to configure it. But it's very possible, and I've done it before in the past.
You have like two ways of doing it, actually. You have either through the Zapier, like typical one, like, something happened, maybe it's your webinar registration, then that triggers a Zap that directly add a prospect and start a campaign on them. Or the other way is effectively through the automatic spreadsheet, like the auto import. So you have like a spreadsheet that you import into QuickMail and you say, this is an auto import. So every time another registrant is added to that spreadsheet, then automatically it'll be added to QuickMail. And the other cool thing that we actually changed for Zapier is that now, especially for people who are on the free Zapier plan, Zapier actually changed their stuff. I think sometime about end of last year, when they said like it needs 2 Zaps now to actually just create a prospect and then add it to your campaign. So we sort of like merged that into one. But we merged that into one. So now you can actually create a prospect, and by the way, start him on the same campaign as well. So people who want to stay on a free plan of Zapier can still use that at this stage.
Awesome. Yeah. So before we kind of like move on to the other campaign or talk a little bit more about this, is there anything you wanted me to show specifically, Jeremy, on either kind of how we're using it or just general QuickMail knowledge?
No, I think that's great. I'm just trying to understand exactly how you're using your account. So you're gathering or collecting the leads, and at some point in a time, you decide, okay, let's import those ones into QuickMail. I get that right?
Yeah, for these.
Okay.
So we also have, I guess I'll show these two for archives. I have been running some outbound, and Jeremy, you are one of my leads, and so we have our call. But I've been running outbound to try to do customer discovery around some sponsor plans we can use to help fund and grow our community. And so these that you see here are actually personalized, like outbound cadences to people.
Can I see the one with 50% reply rate?
This one, sure.
Nice. Oh, you started with a task. Nice. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I bunched up the sponsors into different groups. This one is somebody that is in my network, but that doesn't directly like know me, or I wasn't comfortable enough just being like, hey, get on a call with me. So I thought, hey, I'll lead with, if I'm not already connected to them on social, connect. If I am, interact, let them know I am there.
And that means like LinkedIn, for example, or something else?
Yeah, so for me, LinkedIn is my primary channel and where most of my buyers spend their time on. But that's a good point that like, regardless of what social channel, like I think you can manage those tasks in QuickMail if it's part of the cadence.
So how do you actually, I see the task and the instruction is simply like connect with someone. What I've seen other people doing, and actually I do that myself, is actually adding in the instruction a direct link to their LinkedIn page. So I'm using like a custom.
Smart.
Yeah, I'm using a custom attributes. And if I don't have any LinkedIn value for this, then I use a default one. And the default one is a Google search that search for the first name, last name, company name, in URL, LinkedIn/in something. And usually this is the first one, on every time. So that's pretty cool.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah, so this was actually a pretty short email. I was really focused on kind of getting feedback on these sponsor plans. So I sent a quick kind of intro because these are people that are not cold, but I wasn't very familiar with.
Nice. Look, 19% reply rate on a first email. That's pretty good already. And you're also having like open and click tracking. Okay, fair enough. You don't have any clicks.
Yeah, I don't have any links. And that's a tip for everyone out there. I do not use links for the first couple of emails I send to new email servers I've never touched with outbound. Right. I think that's like a good best practice just to make sure you don't step on any toes.
I like you have a custom intro like me. I got like a custom attribute. Can you give us an example of what you have for an intro?
So I used that custom intro for all three of the groups. So the ones I knew well, I really dove in. And then the ones that I didn't know as well, I tried to find something that kind of brought some common ground between us. And so an example, one that I think ended up in the campaign is something along the lines of, I noticed that you are also producing really valuable content for the sales community. So, it's not super hyper personalized, but it's but it is targeted to the persona and saying like, we both do this.
Hold on a second. I'm actually pretty surprised. You got bullet points, and usually I'm like super against it. So can we see the email like in full, maybe?
Yeah,
or
sure.
Otherwise, you could click on the review at the top right, so we can see basically the whole campaign and stuff.
Yeah, sure. Just move your face out of the way.
Yeah, no one cares about my face.
Yeah. All right. Step 1, connect.
Intro plus feedback. That's your subject. Fair enough.
Yeah, and I think to your point on bullet points, it's wishy-washy. I think if you can minimize the length of the email through that, it's worth it. So in this case, what I was trying to do is kind of say like, hey, I'm looking for feedback on our sponsor plans.
Love your CTA.
Here's what we're doing.
Clear, simple, doesn't engage much, not much string attached. It's a very low commitment CTA, so that's not surprising. You're getting a lot of replies and you're not planning on selling something, so that looks good. Yeah.
Cool.
I'm
Here's
still
my
surprised about the bullet point. I would have give you like 3-5%. So see, I'm still learning.
see, yeah. Well, see, what's interesting here is I believe by memory, not by looking at the data before this call, but I believe that this one, though it
I've
has,
seen this one. I've seen the little
yeah,
fish. I liked it.
this
Yeah.
one I think actually worked the best universally across all groups. It got the best kind of most positive responses. And me personally, that's one of the few times that I've used emojis within an email subject line. It's something that I've always been kind of like, people, the wave rises, people start doing it a bunch, and I'm kind of sitting back and seeing what's happening. But this is a good indication to me that, especially if you're reaching out to the right group and you have the right context around it, it's okay to use emojis and be a little bit informal.
Yeah, totally love it. It's more conversational stuff, and it's not as heavy as an image. Like, we're talking like newsletter with massive image and stuff. That doesn't work because you can't do it on a 101. But even on 101, sometimes I drop an emoji, to a friend and stuff like that. So that became
Right.
part of the culture. It's totally fine, I think, in your outreach.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So to recap
Sweet.
this, I didn't keep pitching, I think, and that's something that should be noted here, that when you're doing outbound and stuff, like, you don't always just want to make every email trying to like pitch them to get on a call to sell your service.
I
And so
like
here,
CTA different on each email. That's really
right.
good.
Well,
Yeah.
and what's interesting too is this got a 60% reply rate, where I basically was just like, all right, I'm not even going to try to sell them. These people are valuable in my network, and I just want to build that relationship. And
Your
I just,
own episode. You're
right? It's
stroking
just
their
like,
feathers.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. And what's this task? Like, set status and next step. What do you do at the, step 9?
So for context, this is kind of like my test run for doing customer discovery, because
Yeah.
we are at an early stage enough to where we need to start figuring out a good sales process for this.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm essentially doing there is they're all in my CRM, they're logged into HubSpot. And once they finish that sequence, that's when I go in and say like, okay, like based on what they did, how many times they opened it, or whether or not they replied, like, should I keep following up? Should I just like kind of keep them in touch? Or should I keep pivoting and try to just do something partner related rather than having them as a lead for sponsor
Got
sales?
it. It's just to make sure it doesn't, fall through cracks, and you kind of update, where your status is at. And do you want to do
Exactly.
anything with them at the end, like, or you just put them on the side until you got an idea of what to do with them?
Was that a question?
Yeah, it's a question. Do you actually put them on the side once you reach this task? Do you actually just put them like sort of like archive mode? Is like, okay, right, you put those things, or do you actually do something with those leads? Like, I don't know, retargeting or different type of campaign or.
Yeah, so I think in other situations at some of the companies I work for, we would be doing retargeting.
Yeah.
I think for SD-Rev's case, since it's really kind of soft and mostly focused on feedback for customer discovery. So I think what I was most of what I've done is just been keep interacting with them on social when you can, and follow up if it's relevant to see if we can start
You
the
know what I would
conversation.
do actually is I would especially building up on your step 7 that seems to get like really good reply, I think, because you're dropping a lot of good names. Then I would do that whenever I interview someone else. I will reselect them and drop them into the next campaign saying like, hey, we just recently interviewed XYZ, thought I'll be catching up again with you and see if things are less busy on your side, and if you will be still interested in doing something, stuff like building some momentum and then making it irresistible for them to say like, gosh, I have to be part of this. It's picking up steam.
Yeah, I think the recency would bring urgency there, because then it's, instead of you just saying like, we've interviewed these people, you're like, I interviewed this person
Yeah, last
last
week. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, looks great. I'm loving it.
Well, cool. Let me hop out of here because I'm trying to do it screen by screen. But let me go into the second campaign that I wanted to go over,
Mm-hmm.
just to give you guys more, I think, relevant context, since I do understand that, building a community and interacting with it is only one part, I think, of the whole B2B customer journey. So
For sure.
I wanted to show this one, which is an actual campaign that I'm managing for a client,
Okay.
where we are going after, not too targeted, but targeted lists of people. So this isn't hyper personalized. These are just basically well-researched and well-constructed email cadences.
Mm-hmm.
And if you'll notice, the first thing I want to point out is, spoiler alert, this is how I test email messaging. And this is why I tend to find results pretty quickly. Because instead of just always A/B testing the same themes and keeping the same sequence structure forever, I start that first because I want to see what's the best first step, what's the best second step. And what you'll find is, and I'd love to go into another call about this sometime, Jeremy, but one theme might be killer in step 2 as a follow-up to another theme, but it might
True.
be terrible as a follow-up for a different theme that's starting out. And so being able to test your ordering, I think is really the best way I've been able to kind of utilize QuickMail. Because of the way it's structured, it's very easy to not only do micro tests where you're going after little A/B tests to test messaging, but you can test the entire journey with QuickMail. And as you can see here, I just X one out when I'm done using it.
Yeah, what happened to V3? It didn't pass the test?
Yeah, so I think, yeah.
Sorry, V3, you're out.
Yeah, I think the advantage of doing this initially is it allows you to kind of build off of the momentum and focus where things are going right. And what I noticed is, you see here V1, even after 200 sends, is still consistently above 60. This one's near 70, but this one has struggled since the beginning to go above 60. So, I recognized that early. I think at that point, these two were up at 70% open rate. So I said, up a 20% open rate, even with 27 data points, I'm going to call it, I'm going to say that's a loser.
Yeah, that's a good question. Is that not too early to call it? I mean, it depends on, how many leads you have on your market that will fit.
Yeah, I think
audience.
It depends. When you're testing stuff like this, right now, for instance, that was me focusing on the open rate. So, when you're sending and you have 30 sends, that's enough
Yeah,
data
it could be
to
the
tell you
messaging,
whether
you're
or not.
right.
Yeah, you can't test messaging with that little data, but you can get a pretty quick glimpse of whether or not a theme is working as step 1 or step 2.
And I can see also that's pretty cool. You also got multiple variations for each sort of step.
Yes, I do. So what you can see here is basically the different types of themes and the ordering of the first 4. Because in my opinion, the first 4 emails are really the most important if you're trying to convert somebody quickly that's in market. If they don't respond after then, it's generally because they're not in market then and they fall into market later.
So do you actually create your V1, then you clone the V1 and then you reorder the steps? Is that as simple as doing that?
Yes. Okay. I
Cool.
pretty much just clone them and reorder the steps. Yeah.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah. Can we go into one and then see a bit how it goes, or is that too secret?
Yeah, sure. Cool. So what you can see here, and this would be really the only feedback I have about the testing of QuickMail is, once I go into A/B testing, I have a spreadsheet with every single theme variation I can create and all of the data behind each one. And so when one loses, I go in here and I'll actually just pause it for the entire campaign. So that means all sequences that have this variation for the expertise over resources theme gets axed and gets replaced with a new one.
Okay, interesting. And how often do you actually do that? How often do you revisit your campaign and say, okay, this one's is out?
Yep. So it depends on, testing really is kind of a thing that changes and gets faster over time. And so we're kind of in the first couple of months, I'd say month 2 here. Mm-hmm. And so for this, we're testing maybe every 2 weeks, maybe 3, because we just started, we don't have that wave yet where all the people are in sequence in steps 5 through 8 and kind of piling on the sends. So I think later on, when we start getting a little bit more rapid, when we start getting enough sends, we'll be doing it every week. Basically, every Friday I go in and I just rip this apart.
Once a week.
I planted in my own custom spreadsheet that kind of digs apart the data and all the variations, and then I just go in and make changes.
Yeah, sounds good. Once a week is enough, I think. What's your CTA? What do you actually pitch for?
Yep. So in this one, we're actually just one thing I've learned this both from LinkedIn and kind of sales leaders as well as just testing doing this that you see here, that it's better to just ask if they're actually interested in continuing a conversation rather than assuming that they're going to do it. So like saying, when are you available for a call? That's off-putting. Whereas saying like, are you open to a call gives them the advantage, I think, and makes them feel more comfortable saying yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also with the results on reply rate, because the commitment on the CTA is still stronger than the previous one we've seen.
Yeah. Well, I think another thing to keep in mind too is this is one of the currently top performing first themes, like step one themes for this client. And if you notice, I don't mention their company at all.
Yeah, you
I don't
do.
say,
You got company.name on the third paragraph.
no. I'm talking about my client's brand.
Oh,
I
I
don't
see.
talk about their brand and what
Don't you,
they accomplished at
that's
all.
true. Do you
I don't
have,
need to.
but you do have like some reference in their signature, right? In the inbox signature.
Of course.
Yeah,
But I think like in an email, a lot of what I see nowadays, like when I go through my inbox, it's always just like, let me give you like a landing page about my brand and then ask your CTA, right? And this is the data. This is one of our top performing themes right now. And it doesn't have anything about the actual client that's selling this.
yeah, that's pretty rad.
Cool.
Cool.
Anything else you want to see, Jeremy?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, do you have any sort of customization on this account, like in terms of tags, in terms of prospect, custom attributes, in terms of other things special?
Yeah, so for custom attributes, I'd say no.
Mm-hmm.
For this one, we're really just going after a persona-based campaign rather than doing a lot of personalization.
So it's really a vanilla type of account, right? At this
Right.
stage. Yeah.
Yeah. But I can show you
Do
my
you have?
buckets because I think one thing that's interesting is kind of dealing today with email quality, especially with accept alls and unknown emails. And what we do when we run these campaigns, I do my list building. We always make sure they're high quality and we clean them. And we actually prioritize valids first, like ones that we know are valid based on an email validation solution. And then we actually save and revalidate the accept all unknowns and try not to go after those until
Makes
we run
sense.
out of that segment.
Yeah, makes total sense. Do you have some schedules as well, or do you
Oh
actually
yeah.
just yeah?
Yeah,
What?
it's per campaign, but basically what I do to kind of make sure that when I test here that nothing is biased based on timeline, I go here and I basically I find a starting point. So this is in my local time zone, but this is essentially 7:05 a.m. Central Time. And then I'll have a kind of ending time. So if I go back here to this campaign, this one actually has one at 9:45. And so I'll rotate those out every time I go and optimize. So
Interesting.
if
Yeah.
I'm sitting at 7:05 for V1, next week or in 2 weeks, it'll be sitting on another one. So that way, if time does matter, at the very least, it's kind of normalizing the data.
Okay, that makes sense. Kind of makes sense. You can see everything, by the way, if you click on campaigns on the left,
Mm-hmm.
and then you go to schedules on the second menu. Yeah, this one. Then here you can effectively see as well in different account times. So here I can see you're in Bangkok, at time, but you can click on other, for example. Not
Oh,
this, sorry.
man. Can
Uh,
you edit? Oh, okay.
Not yet. This is something, but actually you can. If you click on the number of prospect, this is the only thing you can change live. So if you click on 15, one of the 15 here, then you'll be able to just change them and they will auto save.
Well, that's actually helpful because I went through and deleted a bunch of schedules and remade a bunch of new ones, just adding prospects.
I know it's on me.
It's okay. It's okay.
But if
It's
you click
coming.
on others, like for example on the left, like here you got an options, yeah, and then here you can actually select, American, or wherever is you actually thinking.
Oh, that's
Um,
crazy.
yeah, and then here you can see effectively at what time you're starting sending stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-mm.
Awesome.
Cool, that looks good. So where do you want to take this account next? What do you want to do with it? What's the goal?
Yeah. So the whole goal of this big mess that you see in the campaigns area is that over the next 90 days, whether we do well for our client or not. So keep that in mind. I think the whole idea and value of testing is that you get insights for the future. So over the next 90 days, whether we do well or not, all of these sequences, and I might create new ones if one gets behind, but all of these sequences will give me data on what's the best themes, what's the best messaging, what's the best journey and cadence for the specific segment I'm targeting. And I think that, we provide it as a service, but that alone, I think, is just invaluable information that you can hand off to a team member or use to really, really optimize the conversions you're currently getting.
Well, I don't have many other questions to ask you. Is there anything else you wanted to show? Or
No, I don't think so. I would just say, like, QuickMail is a really valuable tool for me, and it's something that I've used for quite a while now, a little over 4 years, I think. And I've seen it go
bloody
through
hell.
a big journey. And the good news, the good news is that there's so much depth, I think, in this tool that, a lot of outreach tools miss just because they focus on simplicity and kind of speed to
Yeah, and that
and I
works
think
great with a lot of people, but very often people coming in, it's just they sort of like very quickly reach the limit. Like, can we do that? Nope. And then you just have to move to quick mail. Yeah, it's funny.
right.
Yeah.